Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is calling for the International Criminal Court to punish Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Of course, we all want to see different Vladimir here, in The Hague. The one who deserves to be sentenced for these criminal actions right here in the capital of the international law. And I'm sure we will see that happen when we win.
Zelenskyy visited the Netherlands this week to give an address at The Hague. Russia is not an ICC member country, so the court has no authority there. But the ICC still issued an arrest warrant for Putin in March, accusing him of committing war crimes in Ukraine. In studio with me now is the ICC Chief Prosecutor, Karim Khan. Mr. Khan, it's nice to meet you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
I want to talk about the prosecution for war crimes of Vladimir Putin. What is the biggest challenge right now as you seek to hold him accountable for the war crimes he's accused of?
Well, the biggest challenge, in fact, is to continue the investigations in relation to other allegations we've received. I've said that the whole of Ukraine is a crime scene, and there's a myriad types of allegations, torture, sexual gender-based violence, attacks against civilian property, and we need to make sure those are properly mapped. We investigate incriminating and exonerating evidence equally, and we continue until we've done our job effectively. Now, in terms of the individual for whom warrants are issued, President Vladimir Putin and Madam Lvova-Belova, we've done the first part of our job, and now it's in the hands of those two individuals, if they wish to answer the charges, if they wish to surrender to jurisdiction, if they want to demonstrate that if they have any evidence, to share it with me or to present it to the court. And then it's for other states, the 123 state parties of the court, to make sure that the rule of law is backed up and is shown to have real meaning.
It seems highly unlikely that Vladimir Putin will do that, don't you think? I mean, he's not left the country, I think, in any meaningful way since this has started. I know he's tentatively scheduled to go to South Africa for a meeting of the BRICS alliance. But what do you think the likelihood is of being able to actually physically bring Mr. Putin to justice?
I really don't know, but I think if one pauses for a moment and looks not at the next day or the next week or the next month, international criminal justice, even local, proximate international justice, shows that individuals that feel that they're high and mighty, that people, even their communities, feel are beyond the arm of the law, that will never have to be subjected to accountability, can appear before courts, because that's exactly what happened with the former strongman of the Balkans, President Milosevic, and Karadzic and Mladic, and President Charles Taylor of Sierra Leone, of Liberia when he was prosecuted, Hissan Habre of Chad in Senegal. So there's so many examples from Cambodia and many other cases that those that are high and mighty can be held accountable for international crimes. One of the Nuremberg principles is there's no statute of limitations. So the warrant that's been issued by the independent judges of the court isn't simply going to evaporate in the morning sunlight. It's here, and it will remain until it is executed or it is answered, and that is the job of that we've done, and it's now in the realm of state cooperation of Russian Federation and other states.
It strikes me, though, there's a big difference between a nuclear power that's a member of the UN Security Council and the other examples that you gave. I mean, how does that complicate the challenges in trying to prosecute Mr. Putin?
Well, I think your show says it all: power and politics. And power and politics operates. The law works in that orbit, in that atmosphere. And yes, it's power dynamics. We have 5 veto wielding members of the Security Council. We have, those that have nuclear weapons as well. But at the same time, one can't despair. One needs to look at what's happened in relation to people in their own milieu, in their own ecosystem, with superpowers. They were untouchable in those locations. Their neighbors didn't want to get hold of them. They didn't think there would be any accountability, and they were held accountable. And I think that's what we need to cling on to. And then ultimately, they say, these judges try cases and cases try judges. I think also at the international level, these cases test the international community. What is our resolve? Are we willing really to feel the sense of responsibility when we recall the harrowed faces of the Holocaust, or the camps of Yugoslavia, or the rivers that had floating Rwandese floating in them, or the killing fields of Cambodia, or the amputees walking today that you can see in Sierra Leone or in Liberia. So what's our sense of responsibility? Do we want a world for today, but for our children, of laws, of principles, of basic conduct that is prohibited? Or do we just wish to, have transactional relationships in which anything, rapes and killings and destruction and violations, can be part of the normal way of dealing with things? And I think that's now for the international community as a whole to decide.
Well, it's a responsibility for a country like South Africa, a signatory to the Rome Statute. It's due to host a meeting of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And on Wednesday, their justice minister suggested they were looking at giving Vladimir Putin diplomatic immunity so he could attend that meeting in person without fear of being arrested. How does a country like South Africa, which has signed on to the statute, fit into a dynamic like this?
Well, I think you've answered it. South Africa, as a matter of sovereign will, has decided to sign on to the Rome Statute. South Africa is the country of the great Nelson Mandela. The great Nelson Mandela, whose heart was full of compassion and yet he had spine, he had principle, he believed in justice.
But Nelson Mandela never would have offered diplomatic immunity to
Absolutely.
Vladimir Putin, but the current government of South Africa is contemplating.
Well, let's wait and see, because I think South Africa is a responsible country. It's an important state party. I don't think they need lessons from me. They know what their international obligations are, and I have every confidence that when they decide what to do, their decision will be informed by their responsibilities to humanity. South Africa, of course, was very active during the apartheid years. They were very active to talk about the rights of individuals and the outrage of the crime of apartheid, which is a Rome Statute crime as well. And I think South Africans know very well that the impact on justice that they felt is the impact that justice can give in other parts of the world, and that it's not about politics or power. It is about children, women and men, and their right to live free from terror and other types of abductions and crimes. And I think at the end they will do the right thing.
The way, I would look at it from afar is that short of a coup where Vladimir Putin is captured and then turned over to face justice, there's no clear way for him to be tried as President Zelenskyy asked for when he was at The Hague the other day. I mean, how do you see a scenario where he can be brought to face trial? Well,
I'm not going to engage in different hypotheticals. We have also an option in the Rome Statute to have a confirmation hearing in the absence of an accused. I've made an application last year to do precisely that in relation to Joseph Kony. And your viewers will remember the Lord's Resistance Army and Kony 2012.
Yes.
So we have to make sure that we vindicate the law, and if that is granted, it can be used in other situations, including Ukraine. But, the possibility of people actually being arrested is one thing. It doesn't mean that we should somehow be in slumber and not be active. Our job is to look at the evidence, to investigate incriminating and exonerating evidence equally. If the evidence demonstrates criminal responsibility, we will not shirk those responsibilities, and we'll file applications before the court, which we've done. And the independent judges of the ICC have backbone, they have courage, and they will objectively review what we've presented. If it's nonsense, if it's weak, they will reject it. If it is strong and if it meets the necessary legal standards, they will issue those applications as they have. And I think even that serves a purpose. It shows the law is not idle, and we're trying to use the jurisdiction we have, use the legal architecture, not to give us jobs as a prosecutor and give judges jobs. We're not in fancy dress in the courtroom. We have to show an impact for people that really have nothing at all. And it's not just the people of Ukraine, it's the people of the DRC or Sudan or Libya or Myanmar. Ultimately, we stand together or we fall together. Either we will live in a world where there is this thing called justice that we apply ever more vigorously, ever more equally, or we're going to live in the Wild West where brutality is the staple diet that is inflicted upon the weakest and most vulnerable people. And that's a world we should all have a stake in preventing, and we should have a stake in fortifying justice. And I think in that regard, we're very lucky to be in Canada, because Canada has shown over a period to be supporters of international justice in every sense of the word.
That's just one last point I'd like to, and I hope you don't take any of my questions as suggesting the work you're doing is futile and unimportant, because I think obviously it is. But you mentioned that world of potentially brutality and the Wild West, and the world is polarizing right now between autocracies and democracies, and the world-based order is consistently, it seems, under threat. So how does the International Criminal Court navigate that changing, global binary situation as it evolves?
Firstly, realizing we live in a complex world with many fault lines, with many contradictions, with a very imperfect application of international law, and then trying to apply ourselves effectively where we can. And I think at the same time, if we do our job as well as we can do it, it will not make the world perfect, but it'll make it less imperfect. And at the same time, the message needs to resonate very widely that all states need to do better. We can't view international law as an a la carte menu in which we take from it what we want and discard what we feel is not digestible. We need to apply the law, even if it comes at a short-term political cost, even if it comes even at the short-term national cost, because in the end, the medium-term and long-term imperatives of justice keeps the tide of mayhem and destruction away from the doors of your viewers and again, away from all of us. And that's something worth fighting for and trying to make sure that those bulwarks are seaworthy.
Karim Khan, you're doing important work. I want to thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.